All right, back with another edition of Rock Forever. We've got a very special guest. He is the singer, guitarist in the band RICHRATH Project 313. Please welcome Michael Janz.
How you doing, Jay? Nice to meet you.
Great to see you. Now, I know, obviously, it's a special day. You got a record release today. Music
Yes,
out to the world. We want to hear
release.
I want to hear all about it, but give us a little bit of background, because obviously this project has so much of the legendary Gary RICHRATH, in it, around it, and inspiring. So like we were talking about, going all the way back to those classic REO songs, Riding the Storm Out and Take It on the Run, and he was the man. So,
right.
But talk about you growing up playing music and maybe your fondness for that band eventually, and how it all kind of came together. But really, we want to know where you came from.
Well, I'm originally from the Midwest, in right outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I had kind of the feel of the REO Speedwagon roots that we all grew up with. I listened to the REO, Styx, all those Kansas kind of bands. I was a big influence. They were influenced on me. And then eventually I got fortunate to meet Gary RICHRATH from REO. It was actually, we were out in LA ourselves trying to work on a record deal out here in the mid 80s. And I eventually hooked up with Gary RICHRATH, and he asked to do some vocals with me toward the end of his tenure with REO, and I did background vocals for him, and then eventually became his lead singer. And it's kind of like in 1988, 89 is when I started working with Gary on and off, and I became his lead singer in the late 89, and we did an album right away and toured like extensively all through the 90s. And that's the Strong Survives CD was based around Gary leaving REO and his new group of guys that was called the RICHRATH Band. So and then it kept on going on for about 10 years. We did on and off touring and writing, and just we had a lot of those 313 moments as the Project 313 got developed into. And eventually we had some material that was never heard, and I went back in the studio after, a few years, and Gary flew out, back in Wisconsin, and then we came back out here in LA and just kept on working on original stuff that nobody's heard. Unfortunately, Gary passed away in 2015, and I had a lot of the masters that we worked on. Record company came to me and asked me if I'd do a new CD, and I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. So today is our actual worldwide release of LA Is Mine on Dark Star Records, which they decided to take over the release for us. And we have actual Gary RICHRATH and Michael Janz work together that no one's heard, and they're going to hear today all over the place. So
yeah, I understand you have 3 songs with Gary on
Yes.
this release. Tell us about those.
Well, those songs were collaborated many years ago through the years, and they were never finished. I believe LA Is Mine is the title track. And I believe that one was written in the early 70s when Gary first came out to Los Angeles. And it was just something that was an idea he put together, and we worked on it through the years, and had his guitar tracks and some of his vocal tracks and my tracks all together, and they were just demos. And I gave them to my engineer, and he pulled a lot of Gary's guitar out and vocals out. And my new band, the RICHRATH Project 313, put it together, and he was literally like playing with us in the studio. And even though he's no longer with us, it was like his guitar was singing like it always did. And we put these songs, put them down, recorded them, mastered them, and that along with newer songs that I have and my new guitarist and a couple of old REO songs, and we have ourselves a brand new product coming out.
Yeah, I understand you've redone Riding the Storm Out. Tell us your, direction you wanted to make with that, new song?
Well, you mentioned to me when I first met you this morning, and that Michael Murphy was kind of you've listened to them and you liked the Michael Murphy days. And when I first heard the song, I heard the live version of You Get What You Play For. But then after playing with Gary for so long, I heard some of the earlier things that he did. And I really liked the original, Michael Murphy version of it. And so we went back in time, kind of, when we did this album, and we did it all like last year when there wasn't a lot going on. We decided to take our time with it, and we went back and did it the way he did in the 70s. So the version that you'll hear on the new album is recorded a lot like it was back in the 70s. And it's just a straightforward, hard rocking song, Gary RICHRATH style. And I think the fans are going to love it.
Yeah, well, we always say the 70s, was a real special decade, growing up, being a teenager in the 70s, hearing, this kind of music. We still hear, the blueprint, in the DNA of so many new bands and new artists and new songs and, people that have come since, so many people mine that classic 70s. I mean, it's hard to put it down to a 10-year period, because from the late 60s into the early 80s, it was really a special time. But, hearing something like High Infidelity, where, obviously, Gary's life was probably turned upside down, with the just growing success of that. Talk about, how you feel, Gary survived, that rat race of being a hot band.
Well, I think Gary is, I think he was an amazing, first of all, friend of mine. He's an amazing person, but there was nobody seriously that could play guitar like him. He had a sound that was so unique. And he was, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's, the sound of REO Speedwagon. They went into more of a ballad direction, but I don't really think that it was just so much that they went into a different direction, because Gary still had that kind of songwriting in him. And the songs that are on this new album, I think you'll hear the influences of Gary through me playing with him for so long. And, the guy could write incredible melodies, but yet he knew how to write the hooks that would bring the song together so people loved him. It was just I just don't think the camaraderie was there anymore, and with my stuff that I'm doing now, Gary got to a level where he was, I don't know if you want to say, he was the rocker and Kevin was more of the ballad guy, but I don't know if that's the right thing to say. I just know that I've written some really good ballads with Gary, and I didn't have that effect. It didn't have that effect on me. It was just, he needed to have his, I guess, his stamp on things. And he really did have a stamp, no matter how you play, because, Take It on the Run is a ballad, but it's a Gary ballad, and In Your Letter was an incredible song that we recorded on the Only the Strong Survive album, which kind of had a different feel than the REO version, but it was still along those lines of more of a poppier hit, See, that's why I'm saying, when you listen to this, the main single that we have on this album, it's called Help Me Save Me From Myself. It kind of brings together the whole package of Gary, because it's got his signature. His guitar is throughout the whole song. His leads are there, his rhythms there, and believe it or not, we even got some of his background vocals in there. So, and it's just absolutely amazing. And that's how I think Gary was. I mean, he could put a stamp on something and you knew it was Gary. And that's how this album still has him in it. And I think that's one of the differences that happened with REO and stuff. So,
well, I know the great music, comes through, but I understand some of these tracks were done as demos, and your engineer producer extracted his parts. Tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, let's put it this way. It was one of those things where these demos I've done years ago, on and off with Gary, and then, but like when you're trying to put something out, demos are demos, but when you're trying to put out something for the people to hear, you have to do it the right way, obviously. So now with digital format, you can pull things up and you can make them sound stronger. But we literally played along with Gary's guitar, which, you know, again, was very unique in itself, how to do it. And I've heard other artists doing it before, but it was just like he was right there in the studio with us. So, and we played along with him. And sometimes it was a timing issue, but we got that worked out. And like I said, you gotta get the CD and hear it. And there's a video out with it too, actually, for the first song.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, again, I grew up all over the world, but during that fertile 70s, I started the decade living down in Texas. And then by the middle of the decade, I moved up to Dayton, Ohio. So I was in the thick of that Midwest, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Cincinnati, you know, that whole area up there. And that's where I first heard, you know, Riding the Storm Out with, you know, Mike Murphy. And so it's kind of indelible in that. And then seeing, you know, as some of the great Midwest bands developed in the 70s, you know, how it became, you know, a fertile area. And obviously most people moved to LA or New York, but, you know, something about the music from the heartland. But, you know, we had Kansas, we had Cheap Trick, you've got, you know, all of these, you know, bands, you know, from Detroit and Ted Nugent and all of that stuff. You know, it was, you know, quite a time. And most of these bands, you know, tried to get on the radio, but they were constantly on the road. It was really pretty much play for your supper every night.
Yeah, and it seem like it's kind of it's gone full circle with that now too, with the way the internet is and everything, and record sales and everything else. Now it's everybody's back out playing again, and all the groups you just messaged was part of my learning experience with Gary, is that I got to play with all those guys, you know, and again, I mean, that was really like jumping right into learning how to be a rocker, you know. I mean, I remember doing shows in Texas with Nugent. And, you know, we played with Kansas all the time. We play another band we played with that we just did a show with this last weekend was Head East. They were a 70s band too, you know?
Yeah. What was the big hit?
Never Been Any Reason.
Yeah. Never Been Any Reason.
I
saw them at the California World Music Festival at the LA Coliseum,
really?
headlined by Nugent, Aerosmith, and Van Halen and Cheap Trick. And they opened with that, you know, and I thought, well, that's a ballsy move, you know, hit everybody with something they know and then try and keep up the energy.
Exactly. that's tough. But they didn't do that this time when we played with them this last weekend. So.
Yeah, well, this was a stadium show. You know, if you don't hit them over the head in the first minute, you know, they're going to start throwing stuff. You know.
Yeah, they do that. They do that. But you know, we had a fun time. Like I said, through the years, I've learned a lot just from a lot of the different people I played with. You know, so. But
yeah, it is an education. Even bands from New York, you know, like Kiss or Jay Giles from Boston, they were coming through Detroit to really break. You know.
Well, and you know, we're doing a show in Detroit, I think, at the end of the month, and then we're doing another show in Ohio. Like 2 days later, or vice versa. I don't know the tour dates right now, but I know that there's a place in JD's place in Ohio, I think it's called. I'm not sure what the heck the name of the place is. We're playing at JD Lounge or something like that. It's a club right in Franklin, right outside of Dayton, Ohio. Okay. Yeah.
Well, that would have been my old high school stomping grounds there.
Yeah, it's the Token Lounge in Detroit, and I will find the name of that place in just 1 second for you. And I don't know, it's not popping up here.
Yeah, of course, we had Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band. So much music coming out of there.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, I mean, we through the years, I've played there several times, and it's a great rockin' town. I mean, you can't beat that. But you know, like I said, that's where REO got a lot of their, you know, their basis of the grassroots was what Gary always wanted. He always said, you just get out and play as much as you can, and you know, let it speak for itself. Let the music speak for itself, and that's what we're trying to do. And you know, like it just worked out perfectly with we were on a different label, and after COVID, we had all the stuff recorded, and then we had to come in and retweak everything through COVID, and then Dark Star took over the project, and here we are.
Well, I know, like I say, it's a lot of hills and valleys. It's a roller coaster ride for somebody like Gary to, come from humble beginnings, and then all of a sudden you've got this big mass success, and then you're now solo. You're doing your thing. But you say he was always driven by the music. It's new songs, new music.
Right. I mean, like I said, but like when we toured for the first 6 months, that's what he wanted us to do, is just get a real good following for himself again, because obviously everybody knows REO Speedwagon, but again, he went on his own, and it was a different thing. He was used to playing big places, and then we were down playing 1,000-seat venues, and we got lucky enough to play some huge venues, but he built it up the way he did in the 70s, and that's the way the grassroots is what he was all about. And he just got the people. He was such a person's person. He could just sell a crowd. It was unbelievable. Being on stage with the guy, you learn so much from him. And,
they say some of it's God-given, and then some of it is developed. And we're a sum of really all the great artists that we've loved. Over the years.
Right.
Did he ever talk about who any of his influences were, like who he really got the bug from, or I
think you can hear it in his playing. I mean, like I know he really liked Dickie Betts, from the Allman Brothers. He was always an Eric Clapton fan. He loved the Beatles. I mean, when it came to writing songs, I mean, he was, when I first met Gary, I was playing bass, and I had a 3-piece band I was doing bass and vocals. And he said, you got to start playing guitar. He's the one who forced me into playing guitar. It wasn't really forcing, but I mean, he taught me how to play guitar. And it was like, this is how you do it. This is the way I want you to do it. And then the melodies would come out so much better. And, with his songwriting, it was definitely there. I mean, so he put his stamp on me, to say like that with his certain chord progressions, right away, I mean, that's how I started writing songs. And it doesn't go that far from Take It on the Run. So
yeah. So now, when you met him, was he living in that Thousand Oaks area, which is just west of the LA area?
Yeah, he actually lived and he was living in Malibu, and then he moved over to a small town right next to us called Newbury Park. And he bought a ranch in Newbury Park, and I met him through my drummer. And we actually just kind of went, hey, you're Gary RICHRATH. And it was like, yeah, what do you guys must be, in musicians? And he said, yeah, let's jam sometime. And, one Sunday afternoon, he showed up and said, let's jam, brought his guitar over and said, let's do this thing, and we started jamming. And obviously the first song we ever played together was Riding the Storm Out, because everybody knew it, and, we take it from there. He loved my vocals, and he said, could you do some backgrounds on some of the new songs that I'm recording? And at the time he was working on some stuff that he was still in REO, and he was working with a songwriter from Nashville, and that they were recording, I think, at MCA somewhere in Universal, and they did demos, and he asked me to sing background vocals, and the background vocals turned into lead vocals, and then the lead vocals turned into more vocals, and then we started writing songs together. And next thing you know, I mean, he left REO, and I was, his lead singer. So
yeah, well, that's a great, community as you go west, from the valley just north of Hollywood, and Burbank and everything. You've got Calabasas, which has become real popular, and then Agoura Hills,
sure.
And into Thousand Oaks. It's kind of like your halfway point up to Santa Barbara or Oxnard, Ventura, so.
Right. Well, like when I first moved out here in the 80s, it seemed like, this was way out. Not a lot of things are happening out here in Thousand Oaks. But now, everybody from that area moved down. It moved out this way, I mean, there's a lot of people, especially in Westlake. I mean, my gosh, it's booming there. And I think everybody from that area in the entertainment world decided to buy homes in Westlake. So it's getting very popular.
Yeah, yeah, it's great to see, not too far from the beach,
You got the best of everything here. You got an hour and a half, you can go to Big Bear, and you got, 20 minutes and you're in Malibu. So that's my selling point. I love it here. I mean, like I said, again, I moved back to the Midwest for different reasons, and now I come back quite often, and who knows, we'll end up, I might be back here before you know it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thousand Oaks is like second home. So
like you say, it's the best of both worlds because it's really
right.
kind of a rural area, but then you got the city things around there, but it's not a big city. And then you got, you're just a half hour or 20 minutes or 40 minutes, any number of incredible different experiences. So it's really,
Yeah, yeah. I have a lot of friends
sweet.
here too. So I mean, the people I've been hanging out with for many years they're all still living in this area. So it's like coming to see friends again too. So it's great. I mean, I can only say it's great things about Thousand Oaks.
Yeah, well, we love it. Now the title, LA is Mine. Obviously, being from LA here, we're very curious. Tell us, the meaning behind this.
Well, I guess we could just use that what I just said before, but it's a song that Gary wrote originally back in the 70s when he flew out here. He was, they were still in the Midwest, and he flew out here for whatever reasons it was at the time in the early 70s, and he was coming in on a plane, and LA is Mine was a kind of a song that he saw with the lights and the people and the experiences of coming out to LA for the first time. And it was just basically just a couple of verses, and he was, coming up with this and coming up with that, and never recorded it to what it became now. But he wanted to make it more of a rock anthem kind of, and it was kind of like the beginnings of a Riding a Storm album. You can hear his guitar in there. It's like, he started the song out with a 12 string, and then my vocals kick in with his vocals in the background, and then it turns into a real heavy duty jam. And if you listen to it, you'll get the meaning. It's all about LA and how it's such a mystical place and to certain people, and it's a good thing all the way around.
Yeah, absolutely. Our special guest has been Michael Janz. He is the lead singer guitarist of the RICHRATH Project 313, brand new album, LA is Mine, Help Me, Save Me from Myself.
That's the single.
It's really, it's a pleasure, and celebrating the great, late Gary RICHRATH, of REO fame, but, he had the music in him, and it's a blessing that you guys connected and shared so many experiences, and, you're kind of left to pay tribute to him at this point. But, like I say, any of us that came up in that era or love when you listen back to that music, it came from a special place. There were no big record companies telling you what to play and how to sound. And, unlike country music or something, they weren't forcing all these covers on you. They let you,
right,
write your own song. So it's really, it's a pleasure to see. So go out and get the album, stream it, do it all. LA is Mine. Michael, thanks so much for joining us. Look forward to following up with you soon, and keep getting the word out.
Thank you very much, Jay. It was a pleasure meeting with you.